Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishnan Nair, and here basically we are discussing about the 1676th formula part, and till now basically we have discussed lots of things. So here basically we are discussing that how basically the subscription plan has designed by the World Bank basically, yes. And World Bank is telling that we have designed the subscription plan according to the requirement given by the governments and the admin departments of the government, and who basically know exactly the India country. So here basically we are taking example of India only because currently I'm in India, so that's why I'm taking the example of India. So total around 3 to 4 lakh subscription plan has already taken by the World Bank, and World Bank has already told that we have designed this many types of subscription plan for you. So basically, you can say it's a long-term relationship has maintained by those countries who actually has created the subscription plan. So like this, the long-term relationship also got maintained by the that countries. For example, there are 100 countries who created this subscription plan. So like this, through business, basically, you can say the long-term relationship maintained. So this basically comes into the business management policy also and business management plan also. Basically, you can say how to maintain the relationship with the countries to countries. So that basically is not our topic. So this was basically about the subscription, you can say, and more than 3 to 4 lakh subscription is already created, and we have discussed lots of subscription plan. 3 to 4 lakh subscription, you can just imagine. We have just discussed a few for few only, that is basically 20, 30 to 35 subscription plans only. Basically we have discussed like this. There are 3 to 4 lakh subscription plan. We will try to cover up as much subscription plan basically which is created, uh, but that is basically very confidential, so we can't discuss the each and everything basically because it's a uh, energy level process also, because up to what level energy the India country is having, that also basically is by default disclosed in the 3 to 4 lakh subscription plan. So each and every secrets of the India is inside this 3 to 4 lakh subscription plan. So you can just imagine the India secret is also knowing by the 100 to 200 countries. Sorry, the countries who created this subscription plan. So each and every secrets of India is by default basically they are having, that is basically 100 countries who created the subscription plan. So that is basically not our topic. That's basically the security concern of the India, basically who is telling the requirement of the India energies, which has to be taken by the as a subscription. That's their duty basically. Up to what level the secret has been leaked by the Indian government administrator to the subscription plan groups. And basically, if you not disclose anything, basically, then basically the World Bank is only going to tell that you have not disclosed this each and every things. That's why basically you are suffering. So basically, by default, if you not disclose, then also basically the problem. If you disclose, then also basically you are leaking the secret information of the India country. So basically, uh, if Indian administrator leaks the information, then there is no issue. If the normal person basically, if he say anything, then basically it creates very big issues, right? So here basically we are not discussing that the how the information is getting leaked by the countries to countries. That basically we are not discussing. So we are just discussing the subscription plan, which is telling that we have each and every secret information of the each and every country. That is basically you can say your security guards. India basically has shared their information to 100 countries. So 100 countries are basically their your security guards, and security guards means just to protect the people, right? So they don't do any harm to the people. They don't do any bad thing to the peoples. That is basically related to energy only, physical, not basically. It's because subscription is connected with the physical, not connected with the physical, but it's a virtual data which is getting sent to the India country. So, like this, the subscription plan basically is equal to the secret information of the India country, which is getting leaked by the Indian administrator to the subscription plan groups. I have already discussed that if you don't tell, then basically, if in future any big issue comes, then basically by default, World Bank is going to tell that you have not told this information to us. That's why basically the this issue has came into the picture. So basically each and everything has to be clear. That's why basically the sign of mail of each and every requirement which is given to the World Bank, and the World Bank has completed the each and every subscription data, each and every subscription requirement. That sign of mail basically are must basically, and that basically by default are in the computer. And mostly basically nowadays they keeps into the papers also. Few informations basically are uh, not supposed to be leaked in the computer. So if it's not supposed to be leaked, then basically if it's not supposed to be leaked, then basically the paperwork are is basically done. So paperwork basically has done, and like this lots of papers work are done also. And like this basically you have to keep the basically information of the paper. Basically you have to take care of that paperwork basically, because in future anything can basically might happen. That's basically the army people of the each and every country knows. That's why basically they are always ready with their army. So here basically we are not discussing that what is the secret basically which has leaked by the administrative department, up to what level information they have leaked. Here basically we are just discussing the subscription plan which is already taken by the India government. That is basically the admin department who basically has created the World Bank, who created the 3 to 4 lakh subscription plans, and 3 to 4 lakh subscription plan is already created. So here basically we have discussed about the subscription plans, right? Now basically the balance sheet. That's why basically the 3 to 4 lakh subscription plans are there. That's why up to that level the balance sheet also might be there. So here basically each and every attributes of the software basically, that is basically the management side, each and every attribute of the formulas, that is equal to hundreds of balance sheet. So hundreds of balance sheet is created by the hundreds of country. So one attribute sheets equal to hundreds of balance sheets. So you can just imagine the uh, depth level of the balance sheet also. The depth level of the formulas basically you can say. That's why basically I always tells that each and every expense basically which is done by the country government, that is basically by default getting added to the software basically, software cost. Why? Because the it's connected with the software, because one day basically they are going to use the software, right? So they are going to use, that means by default that entire industry comes into the software basically, you can say software expense. So the balance sheet basically, so this is about the little bit about the balance sheet. Until now basically we have discussed about the layers, basically the earthquake layers, that is basically the god families layers. And another was the nature basically. Nature basically, what is nature, that also we have discussed. That layer also basically helps the stability of the earthquake basically. The stability of the earthquake means earthquake is not supposed to come, that type of stability. So we have discussed that basically. And then basically we have discussed about the software energies basically, you can say, which are basically already converted into the human needs. And that basically is the software energies are converted into the human needs. So they are basically by default going to convert to the blood cells, right? And according to the blood cells basically the medicines are prepared. They have done the R&D of the each and every human needs, which is basically created by the software. And so they have basic, if you create the software and human needs from the software energy, by default you are going to spend 1 to 2 lakh crore basically as an amount. If you are spending this much, then basically by default you are going to test. If basically you are creating one small software, that also basically is tested, right? So this is the basically the big level software basically. It's a big level software. So by default it's going to be tested only. By default you test the thing, and by default the software basically which you create, that you create in modular wise only, right? So the according to the software the energy gets created, that is equal to the software energies, and according to the software energy the human needs also gets creates. and the human needs if gets creates that basically by default the human is going to use that body is going to use that human needs, and then by default the blood cells is also going to generate it. That basically you can say, for example, one uh, apple basically got created from that software. So basically this apple will be knowing as this apple name you can give as the software company name and the software name, and the basically the software and the apple basically. So this is apple is basically created from the software energy. So by default the hierarchy of the software also basically connected like this. And then basically the if the blood cells has connected, then by default basically you can say that the disease also will connect by default, because if you are if your body basically is perfectly fine, and your body can take the any of the blood cells basically new blood cells and new blood cells sub blood cells energy, then basically you will never get disease. But your body is not up to that level, then basically by default you are going to get disease, right? That is basically human nature basically, because human is created like that way, that if your blood cells does not suits the particular new blood cells which has came, then basically you have to connect with doctors, and basically or you can connect with the uh, medical, what to say, medical dispensary basically you can say, uh, the medical store basically you can say. But basically that basically very rare happens, because nowadays each and every people concerned with doctor only basically. If you get small basically disease also, because it's connected with blood cells, that's why. But few people basically believes in the medical store also. So but there are many people basically in this world who believe in god, doctors, and few people says that no, basically we don't believe in doctor. They do that desi ilaj basically, desi treatments. So that depends upon the work culture basically of what they do, and each and every stuffs are there basically. So there are here basically we are discussing about the software energy which has converted into the human needs. And software, just to create one apple, just to create one apple, the expenses basically is up to the 1 to 2 lakh crore basically, you can say. You can just imagine 1 to 2 lakh crore has been spent just to create one apple. So you can just imagine, because the virtual land has created, the chemicals has created, the each and every blood groups data according to that the apple has created. So lots of basically process has happened, and lots of testing has happened, lots of time has taken, lots of human basically the employees are used in this creation basically of the apple. Lots of software basically expense has happened, so it's not a easy task. So only basically this human needs basically of the human needs, those groups can only basically able to create who basically have the money. So 1 to 2 lakh crore, it's not a small amount, right? First to create the apple, sorry, first to create the software, then basically, so basically whatever the software companies currently uh, which we have in the indian market, that mostly basically might be connected with the set of energy groups, right? That is by default basically, because those groups can only able to afford 1 to 2 lakh crore, right? Anybody else can basically, one normal software company owner, basically up to what level he can earn. If it's a very big level of software company, then basically he can earn 100 crore, 200 crore, assume that it's 1000 crore, assume it's more basically. If business is happening, then 3 to 4000, 5 to 6000, 10,000 crore. But it's a 1 to 2 lakh crore basically. So normal software company only who is having the business of software, he can't basically create the human needs. That is basically by default it's assumed, because 1 to 2 lakh crore, those people basically, those software company, sorry, those businessmen only can able to do the expense who basically have the other than software business also. Because 1 to 2 lakh crore, it's not a normal amount, it's a big level amount basically you can say. So 1 to 2 lakh crore is the expense of the human needs basically creation. So because nuclear power plant comes into the picture, the power company comes into the picture, the maintenance comes into the picture. For example, one person has eaten 1 kilo apple, right? So that 1 kilo apple basically he has eaten. So that basically oxygen also you have to pass to that person, and for that basically you have to send your data to the power companies and energy companies and the nuclear power plant that this is the apple and data that basically you have to pass. So you have to do the expense in power companies and energy companies and the nuclear power plant also, that your people have are basically eating the apple and they have spent the money and they have invested the money in your apple. Then basically you have to give the data of the oxygen also, because the blood cells is going to generate in the apple, so that blood cells basically requires the oxygen, right? So for that you have to send the data of the apple to the energy company, power company, and nuclear company. That is basically by default. Any small businessman basically also can understand this. What which just now basically I have told. So here basically the things are basically coming to the negative types and the positive types basically. You can say. So negative type means the data are going to be sent by the power companies in an normal way or some way that it will not harm basically. And positivity is also like this basically, they are going to send. So if they are not sending, then basically it's a negative side. But this basically never happens basically. Why? Because the energy company, power companies, and the nuclear power plant never stops. Why? This is the reason. So, like this, basically, we are talking about the human needs, basically, which is already generated by the software companies. But here, basically, it's not invested by the software company. Software company has just created the software, and the how the basically the Apple are basically going to create it by the software. One example, basically, I have taken in the one of the videos, and then also basically I will take a little bit example. For example, when software has to be created of the CRM, then basically the so Microsoft assume that is going to create it in the Microsoft. So Microsoft have got the requirement that this CRM software is going to be created in the going to create Apple, and the power company also knows that this software company is going to create the CRM software, and the CRM software is going to design according to the Apple energy basically, right? So this data the power company has. So the power company is going to supply the power to that software company when they are going to create the software. So basically, the power company knows that how many people are working in this CRM software. Who is the project manager? Who is the project director? Who is the company owner? How many employees are basically working in this CRM software? How many testers are there? How many quality departments people are there? How many developers are there? How many team leaders are there? How many project managers are there? So each and every information basically the Microsoft knows, and the because you are doing the coding in the Microsoft, right? That is basically assume that it's developing in the .NET. So .NET basically keeps the track of their each and every coder basically who is basically doing the coding or of the. So they basically why they keeps the track, because each and every lines are connecting to the physical area. Each and every lines of the .NET code is connected to the physical area, because Microsoft .NET is actually created from the more than 2 to 3,000 cities. So you can just imagine the calculation level of the Microsoft also. So here basically the Microsoft has told that this software is going to create it to the power companies, and power companies told that yeah basically um, the power data is going we are going to send the power data according to the Apple energy. Like this basically the CRM software is there developed and tested by the entire team, and then the project director has given the project director and the delivery head basically has given the sign off mail that our project is already completed, and you can give the sign off. The clients also checked the software, and then basically the client told that yeah basically the software is perfectly fine, you can basically take the sign off mail, and basically the client has given the sign off mail, and the project has basically shifted to the maintenance. So like this the project has shifted, and like this the project has shifted to the live environment, that is basically the server basically, you can say. The for example, there are many server companies like Compaq is there, Microsoft is there, and the HP is there, like this Dell is there, like this basically there are Microsoft itself basically have own server. The AWS nowadays is there, that is basically Amazon. So each and every basically server company basically, you can say, who are basically deploying each and every projects. So here basically we are taken as an example of the CRM. So CRM project is deployed in the server and the maintenance project has started, and the project has basically the from the server side, basically the power companies are nowadays taking the data. So like this, the nuclear power plant and the energy plant and the power companies are basically taking the data of the Apple Energy, and the data are getting entered according to the Apple Energy only, because the CRM software is specially created for Apple Energy only. So this, in this CRM software, the data which is going to enter on the base of the sales group, that is basically the management industry who basically is designing the Apple Energy, and after the energy, the so basically sales groups and the management groups are basically creating the Apple Energy and the Apple human needs. Actually, they are selling the apples on the base of the software CRM. So you can just imagine the CRM sales team, CRM production team, CRM management team. They know basically that they are basically going to sell this Apple. So the data which is going to enter into this CRM software, that data is basically directly connected to the going to generate the Apple Energy. So you can just imagine the deepness level of this project, deepness level of the CRM software. So here basically we have discussed what we have discussed, that software energy is basically creating the human needs, and up to what level deepness is that, that also we have just now saw. So now basically now basically we are going to see that how many powers basically the world has, how many power this world have. For example, how many powerful equipments basically the universe group have, how many powerful equipments the world have. For example, raining fall is there. So if the heavy rain falls, then basically it converts to the equipments. Then basically the lava blast happens. If the lava blast happens, then basically it's very powerful equipment. Basically, you can say. So that basically negative and positive both side basically comes from the which each and every equipment which is created, actually that is not, it's not like that it's not created, it's a created by the universe groups to do the certain level of task, right? So it's created, that means there might be some requirement given by the certain groups, then only basically it has created. Otherwise basically nobody will create the, and nobody do the lakhs of expense, right, to create one equipment that also was the universal level. You can just imagine the generation gets over to just fulfill this requirement basically, guys. 100 200 years just go get over like this only. So to create just one small equipments basically, guys, in the universal level. So here basically we are not discussing that, but the things is like that. The earthquake system is there basically. In earthquake system basically we have already told the two, we have discussed the two layers, how the earthquake basically are connected. And then basically we have saw that each and every things basically, and the most powerful things basically which we are going to discuss just now is this basically I have already discussed. For example, everybody knows that human soul is right, like human souls, that is basically known as an atma. In Hindi basically it's known as an atma. So for example, assume that the software company has created one soul, that is basically souls, atma, and they have given the name as software souls, and they are giving the guarantee that if this person basically is going to have this human souls inside his body, he is going to get 98 age. If he doesn't happen to anything basically by chance, anything does not happen, if he don't get any disease, if he don't get any things, climate effect, then basically 100% is going to have a life of 98 age. So that basically the software industry has given the guarantee that if you have these human souls inside the body, you can have a 98 year of age. So you can just imagine the basically the critical level of the each and every software also who is getting giving the 98 years age. So one software basically has reached up to this level, and you can't imagine the basically the critical level of the software industry. That's why basically before doing this type of thing basically they creates the human needs basically. Before jumping into the human souls industry, They have created lots of human needs. They have touched the blood cells and then basically are shifted to the human souls. It's not that directly they have shifted. So they have lots of expense has happened, lots of things has happened, lots of R&Ds has happened to create the human souls. That is basically we have given the name. That is basically the software human souls. Basically, you can say software human souls. I have given this name. In real, basically the groups, the businessman basically who has created the human software human source, he might have given some other name also, because this system is very old system basically, you can say. So that basically the USA, basically that is the United States of America, that basically the small kids also know. Basically, who small kids means who are basically working in the USA software company. The small kids also know that the software human souls like exist, and the age of the software human souls has basically just now reached to 98. That basically their USA basically small kids of the software companies also knows that the human needs, sorry, the human souls which is created, and the name is given as a software human souls, and that is basically created by this businessman, and he has spent lots of money just to create one human souls. It's basically not just a human souls, it's a huge achievement basically, you can say. If anybody but any software energy can give you 98 of year of birth, then you can just imagine the achievement basically what does this software person has basically made. Sorry, the businessman has made basically, because it's a business basically, right? This has converted into business, right? That 98 years you have to give. So the person basically who is having the human souls inside his body, he is 100% going to have a 98 year of age. So that's basically the comes into the medical industry also, that if the person of who is having the human souls as a software human souls inside his body, so which type of human souls currently is active. For example, one person is going into the hospital, so which human souls is active inside his body, that basically by default doctors knows. By default the blood cells industry, that is basically the blood cells groups basically who are into the cities, they knows, right, that this human souls is basically exist in this particular person's body. So for example, in Vadodara city there are basically 35 lakh people. If anybody says that, for example, the world created ask the data, that Vadodara city give the data how many human souls are basically inside your city, and which type of human souls are there, then basically Vadodara city is the very oldest city of the Gaikwad. They can easily give the data, right? Why? Because it's a very old city. It's a very old kingdom city, so they can easily able to give this data. That is, for example, 35 lakhs people are there, and in 35 lakhs people, how many software human souls basically are basically currently active in this human body, basically, which human body? So that basically the data and his generation basically. And the main thing is his generation has started. For example, he is doing the marriage and his generation are also started. And his generation has started. So that generation of the world, for example, two boys and one girl has happened. So his generation, what is the status of that person, that boys and two boys and one girl? So each and every information basically are very critical, and up to the depth level, basically the blood cells industry and the souls industry. Basically, souls are, is also one of the industry, right, nowadays, because 98 years to give one person. Before that, basically you have to create the human souls also, right? So that basically name I have given is as a software human souls. So to create software human souls and to give the 98 years of the birth, sorry, 98 year of the age, that you can have your life up to 98 years, up to 98 years of 1 year of age, 2 years of, like this basically 98 years. So software industry, it's a software industry. First basically the software energy has to be created first. Before energy, basically you have to create the software which is going to give 98 years. So basically, one software you can't use the one software. Why? Because there are more than 50 to 55 blood groups. I just taken as an example. Don't go up the number basically. Number is totally different basically, you can say. So assume that it's a 50 to 55, 55 blood groups, right, in this world. So 55 blood groups data you have to collect also. Why basically? Because the person basically who is going to get the birth of the 90 up to 98 age, he is going to connect with the each and every other people also. That data also basically has to be collected. So it's a basically lengthy process, and because he is going to connect with nature also, he is going to connect with the water also, he is going to connect with the trees also, he is going to connect with the construction area also, because he is going to stay inside the house. He is going to connect with the God self, God temples also. So there basically the God energy is going to connect. So wherever basically he is going to connect, that calculation has also has to be done in this 98 years age of the person, who basically the software person, basically you can say the software industry, who basically has told that we are going to give 98 years of age to that this particular person. So you can just imagine the critical level of the software nowadays is happening. So basically I am a BCom person basically, uh, and basically there are many software companies basically like Infosys. They don't give the admission, sorry, they says that BCom people basically can't get the job. So that's basically their thinking basis. So here basically we are not discussing that Infosys is not giving the job to the BCom people. Here we are not discussing that. So here basically we are discussing that the software company basically is telling that we are going to give you a 98 year of age. So up to 98 year, we are giving you the guarantee that you will be going to have your life up to 98 years. If any basically the nature disaster doesn't happen to you. So up to that level, and basically the nowadays the people are so doing the experiment that nature disaster basically if happens, then also they checks the that particular person whether he is basically having his life or not. So basically it's very bad business also basically has came into the picture. So here not going to the that bad business. So here basically we are discussing that 98 year of the age, this software businessman is going to give. So this is basically the commitment in front of the world. That's basically if you have 98 year of age, then basically sorry, the if you have this software source in your body, then basically you can have 98 up to life up to the 98 years. So you can just imagine the critical level of the software manager, software developer, software director, software company owner, who basically are selling the age. Take this much age. Take this much age. So it's a 98 years of it. And this basically is very critical also. Big software company only can do this. Why? Because it's a huge expense. Just to create one human needs, that is basically just Apple, it is taking 1 to 2 lakh crore rupees. So you can just imagine the budget level of the this 98-year age humans, sorry, software human souls also. So basically, normal software company can't afford this. And whatever software company is existing in this world, basically, that are basically by default connected with the energy companies, nuclear power companies, and the power companies. And they basically only can create the software company, because the rule of the software industry says that you are one day going to create the souls, sorry, the energy from the software. So directly, basically, the software and nuclear power company and the software companies only, sorry, the nuclear power plant, and the energy groups are only able to going to create the software companies. That also big level software companies. And I'm not telling that the software company owner, big level software company owner, they are just in front of the world, but the real owners are totally different. I'm not telling this directly. So, like this, basically, we are not discussing that who is the software company owner, who is the real owner. We are not discussing that. So, here basically, we are discussing that the power companies, energy companies, and the nuclear power plant, they are basically have the authority to create the software companies, that is the big level software companies. And this big level software company is basically created by the this all groups, and the small companies are basically uh, getting created by the sorry, the small software companies are getting created by this big level software company. And how basically they do, they basically creates the, they use their company employees. And the sometimes basically the project are basically, he's if he's very busy, but he only can do this, then basically he gives this project to his friends, and he directly tells that basically I am giving you this project, so you can start your own company and you can take the margin of the profit. So like this, basically the profit margin are basically getting taken by the software, small software companies. And like this, for example, Microsoft software company. Microsoft software company have more than 4 to 5 lakh, 3 to 4 lakh, or 4 to 5 lakh, or 6 lakh, 6 to 7 lakh employees. So they are basically each and every company, each and every employee is having mostly basically the small software companies. And if they don't have, then basically they have kept his friends as a software company owner, and then like this basically they are having the softwares basically. Like this basically, this is the ones, this is basically the about the 98 years age. And in next part basically we are going to discuss the layer of the earthquake, which is which will be the, basically we have already discussed one or two layers. Basically in third, in this next part basically we are going to see the third layer and the fourth layer of the earthquake. And this is basically 176th number part. In 177th we are going to see the layer of the earthquakes.